Welcome back to beyoungministry.blogspot.com, to another blog. Welcome to those who access the podcast through the Be Young Ministry YouTube channel. Today we're in Luke chapter 2, verses 21 through 24, which reads, "On the 8th day, when it was time to circumcise the child, he was named Jesus, the name the angel had given him before he was conceived. When the time came for the purification rites required by the law of Moses, Joseph and Mary took him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. As it is written in the law of the Lord, every firstborn male is to be consecrated to the Lord, and to offer a sacrifice in keeping with what is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of doves or 2 young pigeons." That's Luke chapter 2, verses 21 through 24. Today's text is technical and minute. It is bent on accuracy. This is why God chose Luke to write it, and it underscores our confidence in its accuracy. In verse 21, we read, "On the 8th day, when it was time to circumcise the child, Mary and Joseph were careful to obey the law of Moses and the conditions of the covenants. I've often observed that when a couple has a baby, if they are given to faith in the God of the Bible, the instructions of God take on a more important role in their lives with the birth of that baby. As well, they should. We innately know that the truth of God is best for us and our children. The problem is that most of us lose sight of walking in the definitions of God. And before we know it, we are not training our children in the ways of the Lord. According to verse 21, the Lord Jesus was circumcised. This 8th day circumcision was prescribed by God in the Mosaic law. It was introduced to God, or by God, to Abraham in Genesis 17, where Abraham was circumcised as an adult. Circumcision has always been God's reminder to those who would be defined by him of his commitment to them. This activity does not earn God's favor. No, it is like the ring on a married person's finger. It is a reminder of their loved one's commitment to them. The day of the Lord Jesus' circumcision and his naming was on the 7th day, and the final day of the Feast of Tabernacles. The first 6 days of the feast were for celebrating Israel's deliverance from Egypt. On the last day of the feast, called Hoshana Rabbah, the people would reflect on what God had done for them in times past, and all that God had promised to do in the future. These events prove the Lord Jesus was not born on December 25th, as traditionally celebrated, but on the day when the Feast of Tabernacles began. The feast begins at sunset on Tishrei 15, which, depending on the year, falls in late September or to mid-October. Be reminded that the Jewish calendar and the Western calendar are different by 5 days. In the remainder of verse 21, we read, "He was named Jesus, the name the angel had given him before he was conceived." The Lord Jesus was named by God. I know, it says the angel named him, but the angel got his orders from God. Subtle here is a valuable lesson about life, and it is. We must be defined by God. At every turn, we must be defined by God. I know it's easier said than done, but the more we are defined by God, the more we will experience life as God intended us to experience it. In other words, we will be more whole, secure, mature, and satisfied. We will be less defined by the lesser, and we will be less empty, insecure, immature, and dissatisfied. You see, choosing to make decisions according to God's definition of things is the answer. Now, in accordance with the prescription of the law, in verse 22 and 23, Joseph and Mary took the Lord Jesus to the temple to be dedicated. What Luke is doing here is he's given us an example of how they were committed to being defined by God. The rite of purification was a 7-day ritual. It also included, according to Leviticus 12, 1 through 4, another 33-day waiting period until the mother could return to temple worship. At that time, the rite of purification would be done. This rite included an offering of a lamb as a burnt offering and a turtle dove as a sin offering. If they could not afford a lamb, then they, according to Leviticus 12, 6 through 8, would bring 2 pigeons or 2 turtle doves for these offerings. To fulfill this dedication, all baby boys who were born to the tribe of Levi would automatically be a part of the priestly class. For firstborn baby boys from other tribes, parents were required to bring a small offering in place of the service of the priests. This redemption price was 5 shekels, according to Numbers 18. This law was a result of the 10th plague in Egypt, when God struck dead all the firstborn sons of the Egyptians and any of the firstborn sons of Israel who did not have the blood of the Passover lamb smeared on the doorposts of their house. In light of the Passover events, God wanted Israel to set apart all the firstborn, animals, males, for Him. According to Leviticus 27, the parents of firstborn males could be bought back by paying the 5 shekels of silver to the Levites for their son. You see, the whole point of all of that was to point everyone to the one who was the fulfillment of all of those sacrifices, the very Son of God. This baby that has been wrapped and placed in this trough, he was the fulfillment. In verse 24, Luke returns to the idea of the purification of Mary by stating that the sacrifice she brought was according to the law of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. With this statement, Luke reveals that Mary and Joseph were poor. Typically, the purification sacrifice required a lamb and a turtle dove or pigeon. But those who were poor could bring 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons instead. Mary and Joseph could not afford to bring a lamb for sacrifice. However, the lamb was born to this couple, and they raised him, and he grew up, and he eventually died on the cross as the fulfillment of the sacrificial system, whereby many thousands upon thousands upon thousands of animals were sacrificed for the sin of the people, that their sin would be covered by the blood that was a foreshadowing of the blood that Christ would one day spill on that cross. My friends, I trust this podcast and this blog are helping you in your walk with the Lord. If I can be of further assistance to you, send me an email at beyoungministry@gmail.com. Hey, have a great day.